welcome back into After Further Review. I am Landon Pats, joined by Tye Gensler again today. We are back, deciding not this week for college football, but we moved up a rank. We're into the NFL season finally. How you feeling, man?
Man, I'm feeling great. You know, last week it was a whole lot with the college football opening up, and then now we're rocking the farmer's tan due to the Oklahoma State game, and now we get to add more football with NFL, so now we're in this new cycle regime where we have football pretty much every day besides Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but
it's great.
It's a great week.
I'm not complaining about it.
It's a great day to be a fan.
Honestly, the best part of this time of the year is it's all brand new.
Yeah.
What I love about opening weekend of college football, or even opening weekend of school for that matter, it's all brand new.
Yeah.
We have no idea what's going to happen for it, and I think that's part of the beauty of it. The good, the bad, the ugly, you just don't know.
New players, new opportunities, new things, just everything to be excited for. And going into it, I personally, you're probably going to be shocked by this, I want to make an apology to the University of Notre Dame.
He's already started on this one. For context, if I can give just a little bit here. Last year, I think we picked Notre Dame games 6 times.
A good amount, yeah.
And every single time you picked the wrong outcome for Notre Dame. You either picked them to lose when they won, or you picked them to win when they lost.
Honestly,
and this year, you continued the trend of Notre Dame is going to lose in A&M. And I was right there with you, but
my opinion still stands about how I don't like that they're still in the conference and they are able to just they can win all these games and get in. But Notre Dame, I was not familiar with your game. Marcus Freeman, absolute dog. Riley Leonard looked like his old self, especially despite the injury and all that. And their running game, just, my goodness, it was very fun to watch, especially with all their countering emotions. Jeremiah Love, 94 rushing yards, a touchdown, 6.5 yards a carry. Honestly, even like before the game, I thought A&M was going to go in, which, by the way, they looked really good. And it was a different A&M type game. So going into it, especially when they walked out to Power by Kanye West, I was like, oh, yeah, they're going to win this. They're going to win by 20. But Notre Dame, man, just, wow.
Yeah, it was a gritty football game. For our people that are watching on here, I just want to make sure that we get the show planned out for you so that you have some sort of idea of what's going on today. First segment in here, we're going to be recapping college football, the game that we love, the game that we adore on Saturdays. When we get into the second segment on there, we're talking about how the NFL is back, and we decided to rank all of the different NFL teams in a tier list. So we'll be going over that. Later on in the show, we're going to be going into who we have winning the divisions. And maybe, just maybe, if we have enough time at the end there, we're going to talk about the game tonight, the Chiefs versus the Ravens. But I don't want to cut you off too much on that.
Yeah, I know. That was my fault. I was excited about I had to get my apology out, man.
Absolutely. I think if we're looking at this Notre Dame game, the biggest thing to me was how gritty Notre Dame was. I feel like a lot of times a Notre Dame team is seen as a hard-nosed football team that the second they play a big-time team that's built up differently up front, like an SEC team, an A&M, for example, they usually crumble. And this was a very, very different game for their sake in that point. I think that their run game was okay. I think their defense was phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
That's what won them that football game, for sure.
To me, one thing I'll add in here, probably like one of the last things I can really talk about, is just, again, head coach Marcus Freeman is just truly, he has changed the way he's looked into it. Like last year, it kind of seemed like it was a more conservative type team. You know, it wasn't really like going for it. It kind of was just like surviving. But this, like, he fully trusts his players. You know, he's talking crap to the fans, the A&M fans, saying we're here to go and we're going to run the ball down your throat every single time. And so, you know, I got to give respect to Marcus Freeman because that's the type of coach I would love to play against. I'm sure the players love him. Riley Leonard, again, looked exactly like how he usually is. And despite injuries, I mean, it was a great game to watch. And you can honestly, if they go in with that same dominance with all these lower-ranked teams, I would say, and depending how USC goes, which I know you'll go into that LSU game, they're pretty much set for the playoff.
Absolutely. Moving on to that game you were just talking about there, what if I were to tell you that USC had a good defensive game? Not a great defensive game, but a good defensive game. They held LSU to 20 points overall, forced a couple of turnovers in there, had a really, the biggest stat that sticks out to me, LSU was 5 for 13 on third down, 1 for 2 on fourth down. This is the money drive for them, and this is what I think a lot of USC coaches talked about as their big point of emphasis for this year. I just didn't expect it to be such a quick turnaround for them. I expected this to be a shootout game, honestly.
Yeah, me too. I mean, especially with Garrett and then Miller Moss throwing it, which, by the way, Miller Moss had 378 yards.
Looked good.
And Zachariah Branch only had 4 receptions. And, I don't even think he got past 50 yards. Whenever they're able to utilize him, especially in that conference that they're in, the Big Ten, he is going to be a demon. out there. He's truly one of the fastest wide receivers in the nation when it comes to it. But yeah, again, I mean, we talked to one of our roommates because we live with each other, and he was like, I don't understand. He's like, yeah, I mean, it was an all right defensive game, but they still gave up 20 points or whatever. It's the fact that they only gave up 20 points compared to last year when it was just like 45 plus. You have to put it into
perspective on a Lincoln Riley-led team. This is Lincoln Riley who went from OU, where this was a problem of giving up 35 points a game, directly into 2 years of USC and having one of the worst defensive seasons back-to-back that they've ever had in their school's history. Yeah. So for them to have such a drastic turnaround of, yes, 20 points for a lot of teams is not that great.
Yeah.
20 points is not something to strive for. But if you're a Lincoln Riley-led team that you know the offense is going to be good, because let's be honest, a Lincoln Riley-led offense will always be good.
Yeah, without doubt.
It's a matter of can the defense show up, and if they can now this year, they're a real contender in the Big Ten. On the other side of that, the dude that impressed me the most, the guy that I wanted to shout out here, Kyron Lacey, the receiver, 7 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. That touchdown was disgusting. It was on top of somebody's head. He's going to be an NFL type guy. I have 100% faith from just watching that one game and watching how he played and how he held himself. I think he's going to be an NFL type guy.
The one guy I wanted to honestly personally shout out was Mason Cobb, the Oklahoma State transfer who got the game-winning interception. It was a cool moment to see, and honestly, like being a fan of the SEC and just knowing that they're one of the better conferences, just seeing USC kind of like with the traditional the history of the program that they have, just being able to go to Las Vegas, shut down LSU. Now, LSU's not necessarily in trouble right here. They still got a lot of ball games left, but honestly, I think how many of their LSU fans kind of an overreaction, they really shouldn't. I think they're still in a good spot. Garrett, again, looked really good. That offense still looked decent. They got to be less disciplined and when it comes to it, and especially with that targeting call.
What's hard for an LSU team like that is you have to understand how much production you lost last year. You lost the Heisman. You lost his top receiver. You lost most of his offensive linemen outside of the tackles. You are replacing a lot of things. And so for you to go out there and have a 7-point game against another top 25 team in a much more home environment place, you'll talk about here in just a second, a neutral site game, ladies and gentlemen. That we're going to talk about. Yeah, not at all. But this one at least was a little bit closer, and I think LSU held their own. I think that they're still going to be a pretty good team. I would be curious to see how well Garrett Nussmeier plays in the future, because he had a few of his own issues in that game.
For sure. And speaking of neutral sites, Georgia versus Clemson. Boy, Georgia.
Neutral site in Atlanta, by the way. I just want to make this very clear for everybody. The neutral site for Georgia Bulldogs, who are 45 minutes, Athens is about 45 minutes from Atlanta, and Clemson, who play in South Carolina? South Carolina. Yeah, that was a neutral site game.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I believe you on that one. Go ahead.
There's not really much I can say about this game because a lot of people are overreacting, saying this is the downfall of Clemson, which in that series, the way how I look at it is this is a conference contending team going up against a national championship team. When it comes to recruiting, NIL, and all that, we all know how Dabo is when it comes to it. And you got to be able to adapt to that new recruiting because you can only recruit so much. And especially when it goes to the transfer portals of these JUCOs and these smaller division schools that are able to get recognized by these big teams, NIL is going to be a big factor when it comes to it. Yeah. And so it showed kind of right now how it is. Obviously, Carson Beck played well. Nate Frazier played well. Carson Beck had almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. Frazier, 107 yards and a touchdown. It's just they really got to get this. Now, is Clemson, again, in trouble? No. This was honestly, you're going up against the number one team in the nation, as I would say it, and still they were a big threat last year, despite not being in the playoff. It's just you got to be able to, you really got to look in the next year when it comes to recruiting, or really just send Dabo out of the floor because we've talked about him being on the hot seat and all that. Now, if Clemson's goal is literally just we're going to make the ACC, we'll make the playoff, we'll see what happens, you can keep Dabo in there. But if you're expectation is a national championship, getting these 5 stars, 4 stars constantly, you might need to reconsider.
I think this was an epiphany game for Clemson in a lot of ways. Dabo, after the game, came out and said, we need to look at using the transfer portal. We need to make this a priority within our program. One of the biggest moments in here, and I'm going to disagree with you, actually. I think they're in massive trouble. I think that this season is going to go down the drain really quickly. You cannot have a returning quarterback who has most of his returning production come back and he stunk that bad. I understand it's Georgia. I understand all of these things. But for Clemson fans that have had this standard of this is how we win, this is how good we are in an ACC conference that we've dominated, to go out there and throw 18 for 29, 142 yards and a pick.
Does this by chance change your ACC prediction that we made last week?
I think it does. Honestly, I don't feel confident in Clemson, but the problem too is, who else do you feel confident in? Because I'm not going to base it off of 1 week and say that, because Louisville beat an FCS team, they're going to be one of the best teams in the ACC now. But watching Clemson struggle that badly and watching how good Miami was, which we'll also talk about a tiny bit, it's so hard for me to say that there's not going to be another team in between that gap. Now, there's so much space in between those two teams that played that it's not even funny.
Now, I'm not going to be that guy. But Louisville did score 50+. FCS or not, it was a very dominant offensive game. Was it a shutout? I don't know if it was or not.
It was pretty.
If it wasn't, they barely gave up any points. Tyler Shuck looked good. Everything I said was true. Looked pretty promising. Louisville, I said it was going to be a new era when it comes to it. Obviously, it was a non-conference game. It was a lower division type game. But they still looked red hot.
Yeah, they beat Austin Peay at home 62-0. I would hope that they do that.
I would hope so, yes.
I'm at a point right now where I cannot say that there's a different team in there, but from watching what Clemson did, it's the same story again. Mm-hmm. It's this, and if it was a different understanding and a different reason that they were having these issues, I might have a little bit more sympathy for it. It's the same story as last year. You don't have enough talent on the outside. You didn't support your quarterback very well, and your offense looks like it stinks. Again. It's the same thing again. So
especially when you go from back then when you had like the Deshaun Watsons, the Trevor Lawrences, Mike Williams, Hunter Renfrows. You had NFL prospects and talents, like people you knew were going to the league, and now it's just kind of like up in the air when it comes to it.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and cut us off here on this one because I believe we're getting pretty close to our first commercial break on here. But on the other side, we're going to have a quick moment of silence for the state of Florida and their college football teams, and then we're going to get into the NFL and into the big boys that are playing these next week.
Experts in computer repairs. We understand how important your devices are to you. That's why we offer fast turnaround times, so you're never disconnected for long.
Hello, my name is Roger Smith. I'm the owner of AB Computers here in Stillwater. I offer excellent services for repairs, upgrades, custom build of systems. I do Mac and PC repair. I've got best prices on pretty much everything you can look for.
We service all types of computers, from PCs and gaming rigs to tablets and everything in between. Whatever your tech needs, AB Computers is your one-stop solution. Whether it's a locked screen, a sluggish system, or any other tech trouble, AB Computers has you covered. Visit us at 211 North Perkins Road, Suite number 10, right next to Walmart. Our new location offers easy access and plenty of parking, making it more convenient than ever to get the expert help you need.
Ace in the Bowl Salsa started many, many years ago. I was trying to find a recipe to take to a family gathering, and so I started messing around with different recipes, and I took a little bit from here and a little bit from there, and I came up with a salsa that is truly unique. Ace in the Bowl Salsa is an olive oil-based salsa with tomatoes, green chilies, green onions, and black olives. There's no sugar added, it's gluten-free, low-calorie, low-carb, low-fat, low sodium. So it's a very, very, very good alternative to any snack you may want. As of right now, I'm just looking to be in Oklahoma and having a successful business within the state. If my grandkids could ever take it over when they're old enough, that would be my dream.
And we are back. And now before we go into the NFL predictions when it comes to divisions, I personally just want to give a moment of silence outside of Miami University to just the state of Florida in general. All right, anyways, going into it, obviously that was just rough.
Ridiculous.
From Florida State. I mean, I literally called it last week. I was like, if someone were to lose back-to-back games from upsets, it'd be Florida State. It was just the fact that, honestly, whenever I was looking at the stats, they were 3 for 14 on third downs and only had a total of 21 rushing yards. You don't have – it's not like last year where you're able to give it to Keon Coleman and just say, yeah, screw it. Yeah, just
and the Trey Bensons of the world and have a Jordan Travis. The funniest thing that I've seen on the internet to this is, wow, the drop-off from Jordan Travis to DJU is really tough. It might be the worst in college football since Trevor Lawrence to DJU at Clemson.
I don't know if you've heard that. in the editing room, I don't know if you heard this, but I've started to call him the DJ. You might as well just hit the transportal again. And just, I mean, 21 rushing yards, really? I mean, the only time I've really seen that stat was like my like Patriots franchise when I'm just trying to stat pad here. I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah, it was tough to watch. I think one of the biggest things that I noticed halfway through this game is they were checked out of the game mentally.
Yeah,
they didn't look like they cared enough.
Yeah, DJ, like his confidence, like when throwing the receivers couldn't even catch the ball when he actually threw a decent pass. It was just...
It's a bit horrendous.
I'm not even going to get into the Gators. I mean, that was just a murder.
Shout out Miami.
Shout out Miami.
But anywho, we have the NFL back, baby.
We do.
One of my favorite times of the year is when the NFL is officially back, because it is everything that we've waited for, everything that the summer we've wanted to see, everything that we've wanted to get built up into the season is finally here. It kicks off in 25 minutes.
I know. It's kind of interesting because it's just like when it comes to college football, you're like, okay, who's gonna be the top teams, who's gonna be in the pack, and in the NFL you kind of know who's gonna be in the top, but it's just like how much they're gonna like rise from last year, or like the simplicity. It's a lot more simple than college football, but it's just so much better. Like,
and the quality of talent and everything else. So
really is.
For our purposes in this, I asked Ty earlier in the week. I said, hey, I need you to go through and make a tier ranking list of all of the possible spots that we can have every NFL team in this year. And we both went through and made sure that we had the correct amount of teams in there, everything else. We're going to go ahead and get some of our graphics up here on the screen for you guys to look at. Our first set through there, we really went with the bottom half of the NFL. Wanted to make sure that we just understood where some of the bad teams stood.
For sure.
So some of the groups that we had in there was the number one pick contention, young but intriguing, mediocre at best, missing the playoffs, potential wild cards, playoff teams, Super Bowl contenders, and Super Bowl favorites. For our young teams in number one pick contention, I would like to start with the team that I think will be by far the worst in the NFL this year, and that is the New York Football Giants.
Yes. I mean, that's not, you don't even really need to like explain.
I don't need to go crazy with it, but here's my thing. People are still picking this team to be decent. You no longer have your only all-pro level player. You are relying on Daniel Jones and Devin Singletary to be a good offense with nothing else around them. I love Malik Neighbors. Your defense is horrendous. Get him off my screen.
I wouldn't even say Singletary. Honestly, like I'd rather like test out how Eric Gray was. Eric Gray was great in the preseason. I loved him at OU. I know we're in Stillwater, but I mean he was truly a great running back for them.
Yeah.
Very underrated too when it comes to Oklahoma history. But honestly, I'd rather just test out and see how he is. Another team I have is the Carolina Panthers because, I mean, obviously, Bryce Young there's some promise, and they were able to add some pieces. They're just not fully there yet.
Now, I'll ask you, because I've been curious on this the entire offseason. You hire a new head coach who's an offensive guru who has never play called before. Does that concern you? Dave Canales was never the play caller in Tampa for a while. He got one season last year. They looked good towards the end of the year when he did it. His biggest problem that I have right now is you got to show it. And I worry about with such a turmoiled organization, if you don't have a strong, heavy leader in that building, it's all going to fall apart anyway. Because I thought Frank Reich was a pretty decent coach.
Yeah, they tried to speed up the process when it comes to rebuilding, and they're like, no, we need to win right now. You can't win right now and then have your starting quarterback, who was a rookie, just go in, because you know what happens when you have the number one pick? You more than likely have the worst O-line, the worst defense, the worst receivers, besides maybe the New England Patriots, but which we'll probably get into them. We'll get into them just a tad.
They're my next team.
But you can't go into just because you have the rising son of Lord and Savior being Bryce Young, the Heisman winner, and just think, yeah, we're going to win some games. We're going to sign Adam Thielen. I mean, he kind of balled out sometimes in Minnesota. I mean, he's probably, what is he, like 34, 35? I mean, yeah, he's going to be a star receiver. He's going to get 1,500 yards. No, that's not how football works, man. That's not how you run an organization. You know why? Because I'm a 19-year-old, and again, I make franchises, and I base it off how I would run a team in real life. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
It's just,
all right, I'm going to cut you because I know
I'm kind of
pissed. Crazy on this one. Ty's favorite team, the New England Patriots. I hate to tell you, man, they're going to be bad.
Yeah.
It's going to be really. They're starting Jacoby Brissett, which basically to me says we're throwing away this entire season.
I don't mind,
which is fine because you develop your quarterback. You're not going to be good this year anyway.
I don't mind us tanking this year.
Make sure you get the quarterback right.
When it comes to the Patriots, last year, the 2 years prior, we made playoffs. Mac Jones got in the wild card his rookie year. So I'm like, all right, man, okay, we're somewhat back. We just kind of have to get a wide receiver. Then we try to get Matt Patricia in there as the offensive coordinator. I'm like, man, what are we doing? And so going into it now, knowing fully well we're going to be terrible. We're going to develop our quarterback. We're going to develop our receivers, and being Jalen Polk, which I'm really excited for him. And we're just going to get a top 5 pick. We're probably going to make some trades. We have we still have $40 million in salary cap. This is the first time where I will accept us being bad in many ways. Not like last year when we're like, yeah, we're going to try to win now, and you're going to have Mac Jones try to sidearm and screw it. Yeah, let's throw 3 picks to the Dallas Cowboys of all teams. So it's just this I'm actually content with. I'm content with tanking when it comes to it.
No, absolutely. There are a few other teams that we have on there that we're not going to get fully amount of time to. The Tennessee Titans are lower on there, and obviously you guys can see them on the screen there.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave 2 teams in the young and intriguing. We'll talk about a little bit more, but Minnesota this year just injury riddled, and they have a lot of good pieces, but they're just not going to be good this year. The Cardinals, same idea. Like, they're really young, and I like a lot of the pieces they have. Maserati Marv is probably my favorite rookie receiver to ever come out.
That's my favorite nickname.
But we'll need to get to all that when we get back on the other side, because I believe we need to hit a commercial break one more time in here, and we'll get to the rest of the segments after this.
We would design something, it was set on the counter, and people was either, if enough of them said, this isn't it never made to the line. Dad was excited that they're all original. They were all designed on Mom's kitchen table, and it gets in your blood after a while.
We're very happy that Pamela and Michael have taken over the business and kept the family going.
We took the business over in 2017. When we found that it was available, we wanted to keep the legacy of family alive, but it was also incredible products that deserved to be a part of Made in Oklahoma's story. We were a part of Made in Oklahoma years ago, and so it kind of grew as Made in Oklahoma grew.
Oklahoma is ingrained into everything that we did. We've been here most of our life. That's what we entailed our whole business on, was the Oklahoma homegrown feeling.
Deep Fork Foods started in 2014. We started off with our nut products, and now we produce everything from jarred products to cookie mixes and pancake mixes and dried products for people, as well as our spice blends. Now we produce over 168 different products for ourselves and about 20 to 30 other companies in Oklahoma.
I'm Cindy Stewart. I'm one of the owners of Deep Fork Foods. We've gone from just making our own stuff and doing just small things to being able to co-pack and work with other companies and individuals within Oklahoma and across the United States as well.
I'm just really thankful for the journey that we've had so far, and really look forward to the future where we're taking Deep Fork Foods and being able to provide more value for Oklahoma and its economy, as well as all the people within the state.
I love the opportunities that being in the food business provides. I absolutely love sharing food and good stories with people, so this just gives us another connection. And I can't wait to see where this path takes us with it.
And we are back on set. We talked about a few of our number 1 pick contention teams. We have a few in there, a few not. One of my most interesting teams, I'll get to my team here in a second, but one of the most interesting teams, because I want to get right back into it, the Washington Commanders.
Yeah.
I think that this team is going to be so much better than people give them credit for.
Me too.
I think that Terry McLaurin, for the first time in his entire career, might have an actually decent quarterback. I think that their offensive line is pretty bad, but when you have a guy like Jaden Daniels, that might be able to subside. And I think their defense is pretty good. Yeah, I have them... I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, you're all good.
I have them in young but intriguing because I think they need one more year. I think they're in the position that, let's say, the Detroit Lions were 2 years ago, where they were building the core, they were building the foundation, and it feels like a really good team, but then it kind of sputters off towards the end of the year.
I agree with you when it comes to Jaden Daniels. He's a really good, patient quarterback, knows his pocket presence, knows when he has to run and not tries to force it when it comes to it. Obviously, when you have Terry McLaurin, that's obviously an upside. And then just going forward, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot better than what most people think. I don't think that obviously they're going to make the playoffs because that's just a stacked division they have. But there's going to be some promise. And obviously, as a Commanders fan, you really, like, this is the most upside you can really have.
No, exactly. And it's the most hope that they've probably had in a quarterback in, what has it been, 8 years now? Because they've been starting a different guy every 8 years, and it's always been a veteran. My team, personally, I'm not going to be too biased on them, but the only reason I don't have them in the number 1 pick contention is because of their new quarterback. The Denver Broncos are in young but intriguing because of Bo Nix and because of his preseason performance. I would not be putting him in there, and you know this just as well as anybody else.
Yeah.
I was not a huge fan of the pick when it was made.
No.
I think
I remember vividly your reaction.
I was not a happy camper for multiple reasons. I think the team could have filled a lot better needs that they had. I think the quarterback is something that they'll probably need still next year if it's still the same issue. But the thing that I discredited the most was that this was Sean Payton's guy and that he was going to be the best person for the system.
He fits where Drew Brees needs to be.
It does. And I worry about when they first drafted him, his incapabilities of doing different things and throwing the ball down the field. He's answered a lot of those questions in preseason, and I really, really am excited about this team. Do I think they're going to make the playoffs? Absolutely not. I think that they're probably another year or two away. But at least they're moving in the right direction for the first time since we've had Peyton Manning. So I'll take that.
A team I'm going to put, this is the mediocre at best.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, they got Who Day. But honestly, the Saints are obviously going to be mediocre. I have a big upside year for Alvin Kamara, obviously, because I've drafted him, I think, in all of my fantasy leagues. But actually, no, because you stole him from one of my leagues.
Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit.
We'll talk about it a little. But I'm more interested to see if they are going to utilize Spencer Rattler this year. I honestly am a big fan of him when it comes to it. I think he's obviously improved physically and emotionally when it comes to his character. And I just really loved how he was in South Carolina and just the way how he was. So I'll be honestly interested to see how that goes. Another team I have missing the playoff. This is on the missing the playoffs one. Okay. It's going to be the New York Jets. I think they got the talent. They have everything they need to be in the playoffs and possibly win the division, especially with the Bills kind of going down. Yeah. It's just, that organization has always been such a dumpster fire. Even when they have the right coach and the right players, they can't get it right. And it honestly makes me mad because I'm a huge A-Rod fan, and I love Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. So it's just like...
I can't like Breece Hall just because he went to Iowa State. That's the only reason I do like Breece Hall as a player. I can't like him as a person because he went to Iowa State.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I feel like what's hard about this section, especially in the NFL, there are the very obvious playoff teams and contender teams that we'll get into. There are the very obvious number one pick teams and the very bad teams that are pretty obvious. And then there's this like weird 12-team mix of just who's going to be good this year and who's not. I personally had the Jets making the playoffs just because I do believe in Aaron Rodgers to stay healthy this year. I think that their defense is phenomenal. Yeah. It's going to be probably the best, if not one of the best defenses in the league. And I think that offense is going to thrive a little bit more than they needed to last year. And I think, what was it last year? I'm going to confirm on this one. But I'm almost positive they were one game under 500 last year while starting a combination of Zach Wilson. Who else was even starting for them?
Wilson, Trevor Siemian, Mike
just a
White.
Bunch of random names. And that defense was almost good enough. Yeah. Let me confirm for sure on this one. They went 7-10 last year.
Yeah. While you confirm that, this honestly, I'll kind of sidetrack and ask you a question. Do you think, because with our divisions, we agreed on the same thing, do you think the Jets will be second in the division or third?
I have the Jets as the second team, and I'll get into this a little bit more with Buffalo. I have Buffalo taking a step back, not out of the playoffs entirely, but as a wild card team. I have Miami winning this division. They feel like they're the best built team, but I do think that the Jets are going to make a 3-game swing. Is it crazy for you to think that a healthy Aaron Rodgers and a full healthy season of Breece Hall is now, instead of 7-10, it's 10-7?
Now, let me ask you this. Is it crazy for you to say that 3 teams from the AFC East, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 teams from the AFC East will make playoffs?
I think somewhat, but I also, the more and more I look at the other AFC divisions, the less and less confident I feel. Yeah. So if I go through this really, really quickly here, I have so many questions about, I'll just go through some of the top contenders that people would say for wild cards. I have so many questions about the Bengals. Joe Burrow has not been able to throw consistently at training camp or during practice during the week. He's had multiple times where the reporters have said he's had to take 3 days off from any live reps. Crazy. How is your starting quarterback supposed to play with 3 days? There's so many things with that are unknown that I'm just not touching it. I don't believe in that team to be very great this year. You look at the AFC South, shout out one of my favorite TDs. Also, shout out our TD currently, Bridget.
Shout out Bridge. Shout out Peach Money on the audio booth.
Exactly. One of our other TDs that I was talking about this, who's a huge Jaguars fan, was getting upset with me saying that I don't feel super confident in the Jags in certain spots. It's a lot of hey, you can do it, and I think you could get there eventually. I worry about how healthy are you going to stay? Are you going to keep how good is Trevor Lawrence going to be? I look at these divisions, and I just don't feel that confident in anybody else. Maybe the Chargers, I think, could be that last wild card team in there. But nobody else is screaming to me that I need to put them in a wild card spot. So that's how I feel more confident saying the AFC East can get 2 teams in there.
I honestly, because we kind of talked about that 7th spot, it's more of just who is good enough, but also bad. It's pretty much who survived that season. And honestly, the graphic, I kind of want to make a change on this. I think that 7th spot is going to go to the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah.
I had it at first. I was like, yeah, they might miss playoffs just because Houston's really good. They're probably going to be dominant. And plus, they'll probably drop a game to Tennessee or something like that, like they've had. But I'm really excited with just how if Anthony Richardson can stay healthy, kind of like with the questions. Can Anthony Richardson stay healthy? Is Jonathan Taylor going to be back to where he was? How's Michael Pittman going to be? Is that defense going to be back to where they were, like how they were in the 2014 area? There's a lot of questions for all these mediocre teams, and it's just like that's the great part about NFL.
You want to know the team that I think is the most intriguing team to look at this year?
Who?
The Chicago Bears.
You know, I don't blame you for saying that.
There's
honestly.
so many layers to this team. There are so many different aspects that come into the Chicago Bears. Number one, you got the number 1 overall pick, and you have a kid that looks phenomenal as a starting quarterback.
Yeah.
There's always that buzz. Number 2, you had Hard Knocks this year.
Yeah.
Number 3, you bring in 2 incredibly talented wide receivers in Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. You have DJ Moore already in the backfield there. You brought in so many pieces around this. There's so many shifting pieces that I think I could make an argument this is a playoff caliber team. Are they going to do it this year? That's the real question. And they have a last place schedule, so they could very logistically be in a spot where next year they're looking at a team that's 10-7. I just think that in any team that has a big wide margin of where they could end up, I could see the Bears ending up being 4-13. I could see the Bears ending up being a 10, 11, 12 win team.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't hate you for saying that because, I mean, everyone hates Caleb Williams because he's a little zesty. But I mean, he does the pain and nails. You know, he sometimes does trauma.
Does he win games?
Does he
win games? That's what I care about.
He wins games. He won the
if he
Heisman.
do any of the extra stuff.
He has all the receivers you really need. He's being hyped up, and he is getting the confidence that he's pretty much the next Michael Jordan for Chicago, which you can say that's the stupidest thing you ever want, but that's what you want for your quarterback. You want him to believe he's the next big star in that Illinois area. So, and it's exactly what Chicago needs because Chicago's been pretty depressing the past couple of years. I mean, the Bulls suck. I mean,
Do you understand how low the bar is for Caleb Williams being a successful quarterback as a Bears quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, Justin Fields.
They have never had a 4,000-yard passer. No. Every other team in the NFL, when I say this, all 32 or 31 NFL teams outside of the Chicago Bears have had a 4,000-yard passer in their career. It is the year 2024 when we've had multiple people throw for 5,000 yards passing. Mm-hmm. And the Bears have still never had somebody throw for 4,000 yards.
Especially because their fan base looked at Justin Fields like he was the ascension of Jesus Christ. And he was still labeled as a project quarterback. And he's like, he just needs more time. He needs to progress more. And he was like 2 or 3 years into there. And so now Caleb Williams is coming in with just this low bar. And that first preseason game, he like threw a flick of the wrist, sidearm. Like, how can you not be excited for a Chicago Bears fan?
Absolutely. And there's so much built around that team. I think Rome Odunze was probably one of the best receivers in college football. Their offense is going to be legit. There's so many things that I like about Chicago. And then here's the other part about that I have a really hard time with. When we're looking at some of the other teams in division, obviously we mentioned Minnesota is going to be pretty bad, but we haven't gotten to Green Bay or Detroit yet. So how high is the ceiling of a team that we're all pretty conscious that we're thinking is going to be the 3rd best team in the division? Right? Like, how much can I believe in a team to be super good if I don't believe they're one of the top 2 teams in the division?
If there's not even like a
clear path for them to win their division, I don't see it. And that's what's kind of hard about this too, because if they go into Lambeau and win a game, I'll shut up. Yeah, but sure. I haven't seen that. I think I've seen that happen once in my lifetime, and I'm 21 years old. The Chicago Bears have gone into Lambeau Field and won a game.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. This is a franchise that has been so screwed up for so long, and I'm so curious to see if they've got it right. Because I feel like if this is any other organization, if you put, let's say, the Eagles logo in front of it instead, and they had a few down years like this, dude, everybody would think, oh, I'm all the way bought in. But because it is the Bears, because they've had to do this for so long,
Chicago,
they're going to have to prove it before anybody believes in it.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of doesn't exactly remind me of this team because it's a little different, but it's just like when they had Jay Cutler, Matt Forte, which that's a pull. I wonder how he's doing. And then Alshon Jeffrey and all them. You would think, like, if you look on paper, like, yeah, this team should go well. But then you got Green Bay, and then you got Detroit, which actually, at that time, you had Minnesota. Yep. So it's really, it's hard to say how am I supposed to say this team has a chance for the playoffs when I don't even think they are really next when it comes to the Packers and then the Lions. Yeah. So
I want to give out the first award of the 2024-2025 NFL season here. Congratulations to the Los Angeles Chargers for being the surprising team that every single person is picking. You cannot longer be a surprise if you are predicted to be this by every NFL analyst.
I'll just let you go and talk about Los Angeles.
Man, there's a couple things that I have to get off my chest.
I might have to
with
like
this.
scoot away.
For
like,
people that are talking disrespectfully about Jim Harbaugh and how he runs his groups and organizations, and this is going to be a hard turnaround and they don't have all the pieces. What was Michigan before he got there? There was an entire 5 years where Michigan was almost under 500 or never beat Ohio State. The first year he comes in there, they're 10-2. They lose to Ohio State. Then he comes back in there again. He wins 4 consecutive years of Michigan-Ohio State games. I don't know, the most important game in that school's history. The game to them. And then we're looking even farther back than that. Oh, I don't know if he can do it in the NFL. What was his first year with the 49ers? They went to the NFC Championship. What was the year after that? They went to the Super Bowl. So for me to sit here and say, oh, I need to expect a 2 or 3 year gap for them to get good, it's not going to happen. They're going to be good right away, and he has a quarterback that's talented enough to win for them. I think they're going to be a playoff team. But I just wanted to give them that award quickly. The most surprising team to be a surprise to no one.
You know, you hit that spot on. Like I am,
you have been a little taken back.
You have been waiting for context. Last year, whenever we were kind of like messing with this and kind of doing some projects, this man would talk crap daily about the Chargers and Brandon Staley.
Yes,
and he was like, he needs to be fired. He needs to be fired. He needs to be fired. I don't think I've ever seen
Broncos fan, no less.
I don't think I've ever seen you this excited about the Chargers.
They made the right hire. I think that they made all of the right choices here, and I think it's pretty obvious that they're going to be the second best team in this division.
Yeah, it's perfect for him because he got out of all the Michigan allegations.
Exactly. It worked out really well for him. So. Another team that I feel like I'm a little more bullish on. Now I'm going to turn this into my segment of who do I like? Who do I like in the NFL this year? Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah.
One of the most slept-on teams. Yeah, I do too. And I think that their offense is going to be elite. I think that their defense is going to take a step back. But, guys, can we be honest for a second? They're not going to find another Aaron Donald. It's just not going to happen. But what did they do instead? They went out and got multiple pieces. They realized there is no one player that's going to be Aaron Donald. So we went out and we drafted a Jared Verse, a Braden Fisk, brought in multiple corners, brought in a few linebackers to help with the team. They just built a well-rounded team. And I think that their schedule is pretty favorable for them. I like the Rams a lot this year.
That and the media has portrayed acting like Cooper Kupp's not going to come back the same. Even if he doesn't come back to where he was with the Triple Crown season, he's still going to be the number one receiver. On top of that, you got Puka Nacua right there. So you have 2 Pro Bowl wide receivers, top of Kyrie Williams, and you have a Matthew Stafford, which, I mean, injuries or not, he's still a dog. So it's just...
Drafted Blake Corum in the 3rd round this year. The run game's going to be even better with Kyron. There's so many things to this team where it's like, oh, they don't have this, they don't have that. What are we looking at, guys?
Yeah.
What teams are we looking at? Because, I'm looking at a Rams team that I remember 2-3 years ago had 3 players. It was Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, and Matt Stafford that were paid, and Cooper Kupp. I apologize.
Yeah.
So they had 4 guys that were getting paid fully, and now they got a bunch of people on payroll that are going to be really, really good for them.
For sure. I mean, the only team really I have above them is San Fran, but that's given. And
that's a San Fran team. When we get to all of those teams, I think we're kind of weaving our way into the big boys, the big dogs of the NFL, the guys that we're really excited about. Mm-hmm. So, if we're looking at some of our favorite teams, I have a question for you real quick because we had a little bit of a difference on this one.
Okay.
When you think of a Super Bowl favorite, you had 3 teams in there. I'm not going to say which 3 teams, but you had 3 teams in there. For it to be a favorite, for it to be the person that's front running, especially in the circumstances that we have, why did you have 2 other teams up there?
I had the 3 teams. It was mainly just because they've had the experience of a Super Bowl. They're more than likely going to be they have the best odds of being the number 1 seeds, or they're interchangeable. And so I didn't want to be like these guys are. I didn't want to put like 8 teams or whatever. I was very conservative with this list. And so these 3, which we'll talk about later, I was like, these are the 3 that I wouldn't like be surprised at all. Like if they were like in my contenders and playoff teams, they're like, I would love to see them in the Super Bowl, but I would be more surprised if they were to be in there just because it's a change of pace than the 3 teams that I have.
Absolutely. And we'll be able to see all of those right after the break when we get back for our final segment.
My name's Dennis Abernathy. Lived here since 1968, and I consider myself one of Stillwater's oldest original family jewelers. Here at Dennis the Jeweler, we're more about personal service. My father always told me that anybody can sell the jewelry, and what we're doing is completely different, learning to do the repair work. That is one thing that will keep your business alive, because anybody can sell it, but not anybody can fix it. To me, jewelry is very, very personal. Every piece of jewelry has its own story, and I get to hear hundreds of stories from my clients, which I love to hear. There's always a story with it. I mean, you buy a piece of jewelry for a show of appreciation, a sign of love. There are a lot of different aspects for jewelry when you purchase it.
My wife lived east of here, about 35, 40 miles, something like that, over at Lamont. I was dating her from over at Alva when we were going to college. I knew about the well then. It was a great well. It was great water. I'd stop there, stick my head under it, wake up, drive on home, that kind of thing. And people talked about bottling this water. And so that's why I started thinking about doing that. And so in 2003, the property come up for sale. And so we started working on that, had the opportunity to buy it. The hopes are when folks drink our water is that they'll drink it for a few days and find out the difference. They'll start feeling better because there's been no chemical in our water. There's a list of good things that we have. We don't have any bad things in it. This company means a lot to me because I guess we started it from scratch. And to be able to have it where it's at today, I don't see this as the end at all. I see the future of Divine Water as being worldwide, which will bring outside dollars into the state. It means a lot to me because I started it, I guess, and our family started it.
And we are back for the final segment of After Further Review. We kind of talked about all of the teams that we don't think are going to be making the playoffs. Ty, I need you to start me off with somebody who you do think is going to be making the playoffs.
I think for a guarantee, obviously, you got the Baltimore Ravens, the Detroit Lions, Houston Texans. One team I honestly am for how historic this team is, I'm really interested to see how the Cowboys are going to be, especially with that Eagles team. Because the Philadelphia Eagles last year, we kind of talked about it last year. They had the right pieces and they had the right talents. It just seemed like they were kind of like they just assumed they were going to win. They didn't really care or have like that drive that they were going to win. It was very just like, we're going to survive, and then we're going to hopefully playoffs will just turn the switch. This Dallas team, I mean, they did pretty decent in the draft. They got their offensive lineman. They got Micah Parsons ready to go. They re-signed CeeDee Lamb. I'll be interested to see how hungry this Cowboys team is, especially because the Eagles have been just nonstop just defending that division and just saying, like, this is ours. And so we're interested to see how the Cowboys take over.
I'd be curious on that one too. I'm a little less bullish on them just because the team last year wasn't good enough to compete and be a true contender.
It's just the Cowboys.
And you didn't add anything. Yeah, I mean, you re-signed your players, you brought back people, which is nice. They're going to be there for a lot longer. You drafted your first-round pick. But, I mean, if we're talking about contenders out here, I'm looking at other teams that were making trades, that were looking to add free agent acquisitions. I mean, the Ravens, the team that you brought up earlier, is a great example. I think the Ravens had a top 2 running attack in the NFL last year. Yeah. They didn't need a Derrick Henry. No. They didn't need to go out and spend that money, but they did because they want to compete for the Super Bowl. They want to bolster their team bit by bit on that. And I worry about Dallas, who just, it kind of feels like they're stuck in purgatory. Yeah. Almost an 8 seed in NBA, if you will, where you're going to make the playoffs. You're going to be there. Are you going to win a lot of games? Maybe not. Mm-hmm. You might win one like you did last year, but neither one of us have been alive for them being in the NFC Championship.
So before you go into your teams, before you showcase a couple of yours, if the Cowboys were to have a one-game exit or maybe even miss playoffs, do you get rid of Dak?
I don't know if you get rid of Dak as fast as you get rid of McCarthy. I think McCarthy's been an issue for them for multiple years now as a guy that hasn't won a playoff game since 2012.
It's just really interesting to see like why he's still there because, I mean, obviously, the fan base is not really a huge fan of him. There's not really any success, and the resume he's had with the Cowboys has not been very well. So
there's one guy that does like him, and he's the only guy that matters.
And the guy that has
Jerry Jones.
A lot more money than all of us combined. We can call a spade a spade.
Yeah, I mean, this is how the Cowboys have been run for decades, though. Mm-hmm. This is how it's been. The coach either likes Jerry Jones, likes him, or he gets fired. Yeah. What happened with Jimmy Johnson? What happened with all of the previous coaches? What happened? I mean, Jason Garrett had his job questioned for years, 12, 15 years of his career, and because him and Jerry were buddies, like, it didn't matter. Yeah. They could lose enough games to go get Ezekiel Elliott and still have Jason Garrett be the employer.
I like that you mentioned Coach Johnson because it also amazes me how long it took for him to be in the Cowboys Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Just because of Jerry Jones' pettiness when it came to it.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad they finally honored the guy because he truly did deserve it.
It's a bit of a joke organization to me right now in a different way. They have a little bit of the Panthers stink to me, not in the same way though. I think that David Tepper has his own set of issues where he doesn't really just know what he's doing.
Yeah.
I think Jerry has dug his heels in so much to a point where he doesn't want to change that you're kind of stuck in what you are now.
I mean, he's just making money. That's all.
Yeah, you've made your bed, now you can lay in it and you can figure it out from there. A couple of the teams that I really like that I wouldn't say really like on this first one, but I do think will make the playoffs. Somebody's got to make the playoffs in the NFC South, right?
Yeah.
I already said the Panthers aren't going to be the one to do it. I really, really, really don't believe in the Saints. Like you said before, I think they're going to be mediocre at best. I think that's the perfect category for them. Then it comes down to Tampa Bay and Atlanta. Atlanta, I have winning this division for a couple of reasons. I think if you get some stability at quarterback there, you have a new head coach and offensive coordinator in there that will be actually able to utilize pieces in there. Unfortunately, not Kyle Pitt this year.
Yeah,
we heard that he tore his ACL this year. I don't think that's going to matter as much. I think that they have a good team in there, and I think if we're looking at any other successful offense, there's maybe 2 in the entire NFL.
Don't they still have Hayden Hurst, or is he gone?
They lost Hayden Hurst.
I'm not sure.
It was Jonnu Smith last year.
And
Jonnu's in Chicago now. I don't know who their backup tight end is, but does it really matter to me? I don't think so. You should build your team around the fact that you have one of the freakiest running backs in the NFL, and you should build it around the fact that you have a really good jump ball receiver out there who can play like Mike Evans. I'm not saying he is, but that's the kind of build you want out of him.
Yeah.
So I think that they could be a good offense, and I think their defense will be fine enough to win a division that's really bad. Like I would not be surprised if this is a team that's one game over 500 or under 500 that wins this division.
I think when it came to the divisions, the one that we couldn't think the most was between Tampa or Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it's just with the Buccaneers, I love them. I love Baker Mayfield. I love Mike Evans and Rachaad White. It's just really curious. It's just like when this, because whether we like it or not, the downfall of Mike Evans is going to happen, and where he's not going to have that 1,000-yard run. Is it going to be this year? Who knows? But honestly, I really like this Falcons team more so just because of their defense. I mean, you got Justin Simmons, Jesse Bates. You recently just got Matthew Judon.
Revamped defense.
They're
trying.
So I think I'm honestly kind of looking at this kind of how the Jets were last year, but with Kirk Cousins. I think their offense is going to maybe
so similar.
I think their offense is going to be a little struggle. It's because they're just going to have to figure out how they're going to utilize them and formations, whether they want to do like a jet or motioning a lot. Because honestly, I think that might be the best way to do it. But it'll be really interesting to see how much this offense improves. Honestly,
yeah, I'm going to be curious on it. I think Atlanta could be a good team this year. I think that they have a lot of their issues. I want to jump up. I like the potential wild card round, but I want to get to the big boys.
Yeah.
I want to get to the big fish in the pond. Right?
I like the big dogs.
I like the big dogs that are going to go out there and eat. So the distinction that we had in between these two, I had the Chiefs by themselves as Super Bowl favorites, and the biggest reason for that, you get that type of respect when you are back-to-back Super Bowl champions, and then I feel like you got better as a roster. Mm-hmm. You added an Xavier Worthy. You added pieces on defense over the draft. I think that what did they lose this summer? Nothing? They lost L'Jarius Sneed.
I honestly can't recall.
I think they lost L'Jarius Sneed to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
Outside of that, it's the same team.
They still have McDuffie, right?
They still brought Trent McDuffie back. He's still on a rookie deal. Chris Jones is still there. Travis Kelce's still there. They added more pieces on offense. They added some more offensive linemen. It's the same team. It's the same coaching staff. It's the same success that we've seen before. I have a really hard time picking against them. Do I think that they're going to outright win the Super Bowl? I don't have them as my team right now. But I feel like it would be disrespectful to not put them in a category of their own right now.
Like how I changed with the Colts to the potential wild cards, I'm also going to put down the Eagles to Super Bowl contenders. I'm just going to have San Francisco and Kansas City. I mean, Kansas City, again, like you said, they have the right to be in there just to be back-to-backs, and they have the chance to three-peat. And then San Francisco, I mean, you just have all your returning talent. You finally got that Brandon Ayuk situation figured out. Whether he's going to throw temper tantrums or not, you still have people like Juan Jennings, Debo, Trent Williams, a lot of players, especially with George Kittle. You can't say that they're in the same level, especially when they've been able to go back to the Super Bowl many times. You can't put San Francisco in the same as like a Los Angeles Rams or a Baltimore Ravens, teams that have not even sniffed a Super Bowl yet.
No, for sure. But I feel like I guess I had higher standards for my contenders in there because my contenders category, I had Detroit in there, I had San Fran in there, I had Philly in there, and sorry about that, I had Baltimore in there. And I think more than anything with those teams, I know what I'm getting. I know what what your foundation is. I know what your identity as a football team is, right? There's some of these young teams, like, I don't know what the identity for the Chicago Bears is yet. Maybe they're a run the football team. Yeah. Maybe they're going to spread it all over the field. Who knows, right?
That's how I thought, because like on my playoffs teams, I have the Rams, I have the Texans, the Bills, Dolphins, and Cowboys. Teams that have been in the playoffs, teams that have talent and all that. Yeah. But you're not really sure if they're able to go into that AFC champion or NFC championship. For my contenders, I only had 2, which was the Baltimore Ravens and the Detroit Lions, just because they were in those championship games. And so, especially when you have the Baltimore Ravens, like we mentioned, they're adding Derrick Henry, who you don't even need to give him 30 carries like the Tennessee Titans were doing. He literally will distract the backfield by himself. On top of that, you have Lamar Jackson. Detroit Lions, they were really that close to being in the Super Bowl.
They were so close, and that team is so good, and I love that they brought back all the talent that they have.
Me too.
That offense is going to be elite. I love that they paid Jared Goff.
Yeah.
Pay the dude, like, I mean, for what an incredible story. Yeah. He defines what I think the NFL is supposed to be about. A guy that, when he first came in the league, was touted as everything. He was the number 1 overall pick for a reason. He had the Rams that moved up to go get him, right? And you remember this. They went up and got him ahead of Carson Wentz, who was also highly touted. Goes into the Rams system, struggles for quite a bit when he first gets there, gets traded. He's told to be the throwaway piece for the Matt Stafford trade. Yeah. They go win a Super Bowl in LA without him. He works in Detroit for another year, and then they get to beat him the year after that. They get to beat the Rams the year after that for a chance to go in the NFC Championship game. It's almost poetic.
And even
beautiful football
even add more to that, like when they thought about the Lions, they're like, this team is really good. This coach is really good. They have a great running game. They just need to draft a quarterback. But you don't need to draft a quarterback now. Jared Goff does exactly what you need him to do. He can pass the ball. He's very patient. He's able to take over when he needs to. But it's also he lets his playmakers and receivers do what they need to do, and like the stats will show it.
Now I have a question for you. Who do you think will have the better offense this year? The Detroit Lions we just talked about with Monroe, Jameson, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Jared Goff, or the young Houston Texans? C.J. Stroud, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell's healthy, Dalton Schultz. They added Joe Mixon. That team's going to be nasty. I think that team, I'm very bullish on the Texans. I don't have them anything, like, I wouldn't put them at a spot where they're 14-3. I think that they have their first place schedule, and that's tough to deal with. But when I think of, like, legit, true, hey, if you win a couple playoff games this year, like, dude, that Texans team is really, really good.
I think to answer your question, I think this is the only way I can describe it, because both of them are just, dear God, they're good. When it comes to talent and on paper, because I can't really predict how it's going to go, especially with how Stephon Diggs is with his,
absolutely.
With his attitude. On paper and talent, Houston Texans. System-wise and just how formation-wise and just how they're able to run things, I have Lions, honestly. Especially because last year you didn't even get Jameson Williams for 6 to 8 games because of that suspension. Yeah. And now you're able you got to be able to utilize Jahmyr Gibbs and how he was able to with Bama. So honestly, it's kind of a toss-up. It's just really what your preference is. Like, if you're a true football fan, you love how, like, the formations, the jets, the trickery, you go with the Lions. But if you love the talent, the rosters, what social media gives you, you go with the Texans.
Do you know what I think the biggest crime this offseason was that I saw?
What's that?
Ben Johnson not getting a head coaching job.
Yeah.
How does the Lions offensive coordinator, who, I mean, I get that they're talented players on there, but that was a well-oiled machine, and half of this league is sitting there clamoring for offense. Mm-hmm. You're begging for it, for some stability in an offensive spot. And this guy's walking the Lions up and down the field at his own will, and I don't think he got an interview. I don't remember if anybody reported having an interview with him. I can't imagine not hiring that guy. He's next Sean McVay. In my humble opinion on there, I think he sits a lot of favorable ways like Sean McVay does. He's incredibly smart. He had an incredibly valued and good offense that was winning games. It's not just like, oh, we have a lot of production, but it's all happening when we're down by 30. He's a part of a team that had to win close games, and he's playoff proven now. I mean, how much more do you need from a coach before you're looking at him as a head coach?
This coaching hiring this offseason was really interesting because it was like the likes of even Bill Belichick. He only got one interview from the Falcons, which I know he doesn't have the greatest resume when it comes to drafting. But how do you not give the greatest head coach, one of the greatest head coaches of all time, even a shot, just a show, like especially if you're like the Panthers or like the Raiders? And honestly, Raiders don't need a new coach. These other teams. Sorry, I'm a huge fan of Antonio Pierce, but
me too. I
love
that guy.
It's just, how do you not get, like what you said and Bill Belichick? How do you, like, at least not give him an interview?
Yeah, I have a few prove-it teams on here that I kind of have sitting in between, and I think that this is the make-or-break season for them. Obviously, we mentioned Dallas, and I think that if they are not as good as their fans want them to be this year, they're going to fire McCarthy, and there's a real chance that they lose Dak.
Yeah.
I think that Miami, dude, you better win a playoff game this year. I love Mike McDaniel. I think he's great. He's from Colorado. He's one of my guys. You better win a playoff game this year with that team. Yeah. And finally, I think the biggest one in my head that's kind of the swing team is the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
If the Philadelphia Eagles are not good this year, Nick Sirianni will lose his job. You can mark my ribs on that. And I know that sounds crazy to think, oh my God, you're going to fire a guy that just brought you to the Super Bowl? How many years did it take him to fire Doug Peterson? 2 seasons after the guy won the very only Super Bowl for the team, they fired him because he wasn't that good the year after that. And so it's a market like that. They're going to move quickly. You better be on pace for it.
You know what I'm really interested about, and I want to ask you this, because I think there's one team that we have not, actually 2 teams that we have not talked about. They're both in our, I don't know if they're in my potential wild cards.
Yeah.
The Green Bay Packers,
yep,
for one, and the Seattle Seahawks. These 2, I'm really interested to see your opinions about them.
So I'll start with the Packers on that one first. I think the Packers, I totally agree with you. I think they're a wild card team this year, and I think they're uber talented with a really, really good young team. That I think a lot of those receivers are going to break out this year. I think Jaden Reed's a dog. I think that they have, if Christian Watson can stay healthy, he'll be really good. The biggest one that I kept seeing, and this is really funny to me, Dontavion Wicks, the wide receiver they brought in last year as a rookie, his biggest comp from everybody I kept hearing from, announcers or anything else, he runs routes like Devontae Adams. He looks like Devontae Adams out there, which, if you're a Packers fan, that's music to your ears, man. Yeah, you just lost him, and you got a first-round pick for him, and now you got a guy who you drafted. Because that comparison
does not get handled lightly.
You do not get a route running comparison.
You do not call someone Devontae Adams.
For the Packers' sake, I do think that they're going to make the playoffs. I don't know if they're on the same level as Detroit, but I could see them winning that division just based on they're going to be that good. In terms of the Seahawks, I'm a lot less. Yeah. I'm a lot less excited about them. I think that they're a good team. I think that Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be a lot better this year and be a number 2 receiver for them. I just don't see them stacking up defensively with a lot of the other NFC teams. Like, you got to think about their division that we're talking about. I already love the Rams. I think the Rams are going to be really good this year. They're going to have a better offense, I think. They're going to have a very comparable defensive level because there's no stars on that Seahawk defense. They have Devon Witherspoon, who's a good player. They have Draymond Jones, who's a good player, but they don't have any stars. Josh Uche, same idea. Like, a lot of good players, but nobody who's breaking it away. And so, in their case, I don't have them as far along. I think we need to speed through here a little bit on our division winners. We actually came to a consensus without us talking about it. So we'll start in the NFC real quick. We talked about the Lions. We both had the Lions winning division. Obviously, Dan Campbell's awesome. We think they're going to be good. The Falcons, we talked about them having their wins throughout the season. We think that Kirk Cousins is just going to be stable for them. I still think we both have the Eagles winning. I think this is their pressure season, and I think Sirianni will respond to that well. And then, obviously, the 49ers, we both have as Super Bowl contenders.
It's just the correct call.
Exactly. AFC side of it, we have the Chiefs in there. We have the Texans both winning. I think we've already spoken on why we have both of those teams where they're at.
Yeah.
The Dolphins, we have set where they're set at. And the Ravens, we have winning their division with their added additions on there. Is there anything else that we need to add to our division pieces on there in the last 20 seconds we got?
There was one last thing, and I want you to go quick fire here. I need your predictions for the night.
Oh, I am taking Kansas City to win 31-24.
Who are they playing against?
The Ravens tonight. It's Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in Kansas City. And the reason I have them winning 31-24 is because I think their offense will be back to elite.
I got Baltimore 36-24.
Perfect. Well, we'll have to see you on that another time. But that's all the time that we have for this evening. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you at the next episode. And again, have a good evening, everybody.
See you guys.
Pecans are staple to Oklahoma. In fact, many of our native pecans come from trees that are older than Oklahoma statehood.
My father's the one that got us started into the pecan picking. I was probably 10 or 12 years old, and we started off with one little mechanical picker that you pulled behind a four-wheeler. Then we'd go home at night and we'd clean them on a TV tray. I guess watching my dad work hard when we were young, and people started trusting him and getting more and more groves, we just kept growing.
Being a relatively new and fresh company, we get to sit in the same room with people who have been a part of the Oklahoma economy for decades.
It's opened a lot of doors. It's gave us quite a bit of exposure, and I think people, will take a small company like us a little more serious. We're just going to continue growing as long as our community lets us and our customers keep on buying, and we'll see where it takes us.
I'm Travis Taylor. I'm the general manager for the Hotel Indigo Tulsa Downtown. I have a real good understanding of the food scene in Tulsa, and I've loved to see the way it's evolved over the years, and I'm glad to be part of it.
My name's Kevin Kyle. I'm the executive chef. I started here, the idea was to do something local. Everything that we try to do has Oklahoma products.
Tulsa is a big oil boom when we were the oil capital in the early 1900s. How Route 66 put Tulsa on the map. And the menu around that was, well, what would an oil worker take out in their lunchbox? That's how Prospect kind of came from.
We never get crazy busy, so we can do a lot of different things with food. And we can do things like wine dinners and have local dinners. We have a private dining room that people can come.
I think being at the heart of the old Route 66 has kind of weighed into us getting a lot of different things brought in from different areas of the United States. When I taste something on our menu for the first time, the first thing I go is, that's Tulsa.